Okay, folks, looks like there's been a sort of stagnation of people joining, so we're going to get started here. So first and foremost, welcome. So welcome to the second community engagement session for the proposed Blueberry Acres wind energy project. We do want to note that this session is being recorded and it will be posted to our project website upon completion. We wanted to go over just a few discussion guidelines to set the tone for tonight. Please ensure that your name does appear correctly. You will note that all participants are muted, especially during the presentation portion of tonight. To ask a question, we do ask that you please type it into the chat, and our moderator, which is myself this evening, will read out all the questions in the order that they were received during the Q&A period of this evening. Speakers will be unmuted as necessary to address questions, additional comments, things like that. However, inappropriate comments will not be tolerated, and those who make said comments will or may be removed from the meeting. Any question that does not get answered within the allotted time will be answered in a written format and posted to the project website. And if we find that there is a significant number of questions that we cannot get to this evening, then we will plan to host an additional engagement session. And again, as a reminder, this presentation, as well as the question transcript and answer transcript, are being recorded and will all be posted to the project website. We would like to take a moment right now for an acknowledgement. So today we will be talking about our proposed Blueberry Acres wind energy project, which is in unceded and surrendered Mi'kmaq, the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are all treaty people. So here's just a brief overlay of today's events. So as we're in right now is just the participant sign-on, rules of engagement, and acknowledgement. We'll briefly go through introductions to the key team members here today. Then we'll have about a 20-minute presentation, but the bulk of today will really be the question and answer period. We've allotted about an hour for that, so please feel free to type any questions in the chat. And as well, I will send the first message in the chat just so that you know where it is and that a pop-up occurs. So the team members here tonight. So hi everybody, I'm Sarah Rosenblatt. I'm the development manager for SWEB, and I'm also going to be acting as your moderator this evening. We thought it was important to share with you where we're physically located this evening, and I myself am currently just outside of Halifax. Also with us tonight, we have Jason Parise. He's our senior development manager, and he will be one of the presenters this evening. He's also located in Halifax. Our second presenter this evening is Mason Baker, who is our technical manager, and he is located in Halifax. Michael Carey is another development manager here with us, and this evening he is on for question and answer support for any specific topics. He's also located in Halifax. Stefan Karkulik is our CAO. He is also on for Q&A support, again for specific topics, and he is located this evening in Montreal, Quebec. Rory Cantwell is our CEO, and he is also on this evening for Q&A support, and he is located in Halifax. Billy Hannafin is our GIS technician, and he is on this evening for Q&A support. He is also located in Halifax. And last but certainly not least, we have Kate Monroe, who is our communications and administrative coordinator. She is also on for Q&A support. She is also located in Halifax. So with that, I will pass things over to our first presenter, Mason Baker, and I will be sending out that message in the chat to let folks know where they can type their questions this evening.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks a lot, Sarah. Glad those who can attend are on. And yeah, like Sarah said, I'm Mason Baker. I'm the technical manager with SWEB. And I'm just going to give a brief overview of the company itself before Jason really gets into the meat of the presentation, which is the project specifics. So starting with the parent company. The parent company is WEB, located in Austria in Europe. So they kind of got in on the ground floor of renewables right when it was taking off about 20 to 25 years ago in mainland Europe. They are a citizen-owned company with over 4,500 investors. They have over 100 projects in development in Europe, Canada, and the United States. And the company's MO is really to complete the whole project life cycle, ranging from early stage project development, construction management, all the way to the lifetime of operations. And I think this differs from several other renewable energy companies out there that may develop and permit the project and then sell to a third party to own and operate, or vice versa. A company may come in at the very end who you may not be familiar with and purchase a project to operate for the lifetime. So with that, we are SWEB Development. We are the North American arm of WEB. So as Sarah kind of alluded to, our main office is located in sunny Halifax, Nova Scotia. And we also have a small satellite office in Natick, Massachusetts. So I will touch on another slide on some projects that we own and operate, both in Canada and the United States. But what I really want to highlight is the bulk of the expertise for the North American arm of the company is really run out of the Halifax office. So while we may own and operate and develop projects in the United States, ranging from Maine, Massachusetts, New York, Virginia, those states, it really, the bulk of the work really does come from the Halifax office. So we're effectively exporting expertise from Nova Scotia and using that expertise to create and sustain jobs in Nova Scotia. Next slide, please. So with that, here's kind of an overview of our operational projects in the Maritimes. So we participated in the Community Feed-in Tariff program that was run by the province of Nova Scotia Power several years ago. We're the largest ComFit owner and operator of wind turbines in the province with 40 megawatts installed capacity, ranging 20 turbines. In addition to that, we recently participated in a New Brunswick Power procurement, and we realized that that project, Wisconsin Energy Project, is an 18 megawatt wind farm that was came online in November of 2019. Of note, that's a project that is part of a partnership with Woodstock First Nation, a Maliseet band in New Brunswick. And of course, we continue the development of wind and solar energy projects throughout both Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and the northeastern United States. In addition to the projects you see here on the map in the Maritimes, I also want to highlight we've got 10 megawatts of wind operating in Maine, another 20 megawatts of wind right next door to come online in Maine in September, and 7.5 megawatts of solar PV operating in Massachusetts right now. Next slide, please. So as I alluded to, there's 20 wind turbines operating under the ComFit program that SWEB operates in Nova Scotia. These were through a partnership with local partners, Scotian Wind Inc., Scotian Windfields Inc., and the crux of that program was really community benefit programs for the communities hosting those turbines. And here is just a list of some of the local community groups that we've partnered with and have benefit agreements with. I won't list them all off, but a lot of community funds and local Legion type organizations there. And also of note, we did sponsor the Halifax Hawks Adam A hockey team, which was pretty cool as a number of us actually played minor hockey growing up. So that was cool for us. I'll now hand it off to Jason Parise to talk more about the project and also the procurement.
Great, thanks, Mason. Appreciate it. Yeah, so I'll speak to a couple of things to finish things up this evening. Primarily, I'll focus on the procurement project that we're proposing in Cumberland County, what we've done to date in terms of work on site and some of the critical path items that we're working through. And then we'll get into some of the kind of feedback that we wanted to provide to the community based on our first meeting that occurred back in November and feedback that we've received since then for this project and several projects in the province. So in general, the province is working towards a fairly significant transition in terms of our energy system here. We still remain a fairly coal and natural gas heavy province, so there is still a lot of greenhouse gas intensity or CO2 emissions intensity associated with our energy system. So the current procurement that we're planning to bid this project into in May of this year is called the Rate Base Program, and it is set to procure 350 megawatts of new transmission connected projects. So essentially adding another 50% renewables to the existing 600 or so megawatts of wind already in the province. The intentions here are to see proponents like ourselves partner with Mi'kmaq communities throughout the province to ensure a lot of the monetary benefits and other benefits remain within the province, but also to bring these projects online by December 31st, 2025. That will just ensure that the transition process is smooth and gets us to that 2030 goal of 80% renewables by 2030. Next slide, please. So the proposed project, the Blueberry Acres Wind Energy Project, is between 24 and 60 megawatts. So in terms of the types of turbines we're looking at, 4.5 to 6 megawatts per unit, which is a fair bit larger in terms of capacity than the turbines that were part of the CONFIT program that we discussed a bit earlier. One major benefit of that is that we're able to generate a lot more electricity from a single turbine unit without a significant addition to the blade length or the tower height. So that's a really big improvement from the industry over the last 5 years. And at present, the site's slated to be between 5 and 11 turbines in total based on the final capacity. It's located primarily on private land, and then there is some crown land that's contiguous with that private land that we're using for the site layout. We're just east of Highway 104, right on the cusp of Cumberland County and Colchester County, but the project's located entirely in Cumberland County. And we selected this site based on a number of factors. I mean, generally speaking, one is that the wind resource in this area is quite strong, so it does mean that the power generated from these sites will be some of the cheapest power in the province, which is good for Nova Scotia ratepayers. It's proximal to the Nova Scotia Power electrical transmission system, so I think folks are aware of the transmission grid that runs through this general region of the province. Not a whole lot of receptors in the area, so we're able to distance the turbines from existing receptors in that particular area of Cumberland County. And there's a lot of existing forestry roads in the area and a lot of already disturbed forestry land. So a lot of forest practice in this specific area where our project site's located. Next slide, please. So this is our current plan of record site layout for the proposed Blueberry site. So here we're showing each of the turbines located throughout the project area. These are the main parcels that are associated with the project. And it does show the general site area respective of Highway 104 on the west, Similkameen Drive, which essentially runs right into site, Webb Road, and then Higgins Mountain Road, which is to the far east of our site here. Next slide, please. As with any wind project, some of the critical items that we tend to do before construction is collect raw wind data. So we do have a meteorological tower on site that's been collecting wind data since last year. As part of our baseline data assessment and collection for the environmental assessment process here in Nova Scotia, we've been doing field work since early 2021. A lot of the avian species that we're looking to identify on site, that work's been ongoing. We also completed winter track surveys to identify if there are any moose in the area. Right after fresh snowfall, that's when there can be some movement, and it's discernible within the snowpack to see if there's any moose tracks. This work will continue throughout this year, and we are hopeful to register this project on the Environmental Assessment Act later in 2022. Stakeholder engagement is obviously a fairly critical item for any project as well. And a lot of this began in 2020, 2021. We've continued to do stakeholder engagement and hope to do more of it during the environmental assessment process. So this public meeting this evening is obviously not our last, and it won't be, they won't continue to always be virtual, but we wanted to accommodate folks in the area in terms of being able to attend. First Nation engagement as well began in 2020, 2021, and that will continue throughout the life cycle of the project in much the same way that stakeholder engagement will. Project design and layout optimization are still underway. As one can imagine, a lot of these field work components really feed into where we can site turbines if there are wetlands and things like that that we haven't been able to see through the mapping. That helps us to microsite turbines and further develop the site. Next slide, please. So in terms of the environmental assessment timeline, I just wanted to highlight here that we're essentially at this first step of collecting baseline data. We'll hope to do a lot of our wetland identification work over the spring and summer and finish with the field data collection components, and then work through, by way of a third-party consulting firm, work through the different sort of potential impact assessment, what mitigation strategies we might need to employ if there are any anticipated impacts, and then we'll register the EA with the province. And that EA and all the information associated with it will be made public, and it will be made available for public comment as well. Next slide, please. So the next few slides primarily deal with feedback that we've received specific to this project in Cumberland County, but also feedback that we've seen from our other 3 projects here in the province. The first item is relating to snowmobiles and trail use. So we have existing projects in Nova Scotia, and we have projects in southeastern New Brunswick where snowmobiling is a fairly prominent activity. So sometimes we may get through an entire winter without needing to plow at all. But when we do need to plow, we try to work with local snowmobile clubs to ensure that site access and trail use can remain intact. So we do develop those relationships throughout the project development and construction period. And in certain instances in New Brunswick, for example, we've plowed only one side of the road to leave access for the other half of the road for snowmobiling and so on. And we'll look to collaborate with the municipality and the county and trail users, obviously, during the construction phase and pre-construction and post-construction to ensure that site access can remain intact. Traffic is another really key item during the construction phase for a wind project, which is typically anywhere between 12 and 18 months with some sort of shutdown periods throughout the winter months. Traffic can increase heavily at certain times when we're delivering concrete to site, for example. So we'll work with the county at the county level and municipal and local stakeholder level just to ensure that a proper traffic management plan is in place pre-construction so that we can employ it during the construction phase. And we'll look to ensure that proper signage is posted and safety measures are in place for that construction time period. Next slide, please. Mainland moose and pollinators. Mainland moose specifically, we are slightly different from projects that we've done in other provinces or states. Is there is a concern for mainland moose, and with the recovery plan slated for this region of the province, we've engaged our environmental consultants to conduct track surveys on the site. We really need to understand the population of moose in the area, if there is any. That'll help us to identify how to structure the project in a way that remains benign to any larger mammals using the area. And we'll look to potentially continue using cameras in the area to track moose throughout the project operation. It may be important to note as well, for projects that we have in New Brunswick and throughout Nova Scotia, mainland Nova Scotia, there aren't a whole lot of moose around our project sites, but in New Brunswick, we still have a lot of moose that have still remain on site, and a lot of hunting still occurs in that project area. Pollinator species are typically not impacted by a wind farm. We sort of stick to the cleared area that we use to build the wind farm, turbine pads and so on, and then for the erection of the turbine units. And once that's done, we leave a small cleared area for the project, but otherwise we look to not impact any additional area, and we leave vegetation behind to regenerate on its own, which is typically recommended by forestry management at the provincial level, but also we try to use already disturbed areas as much as possible to avoid any further impact to the forest area and so on. Next slide, please. Noise is a fairly typical concern that comes from various stakeholders when it comes to wind energy projects. Fortunately, in Nova Scotia, there still remains a fair bit of onshore land availability for wind. So we've always typically employed 1 kilometer setback from receptors in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick as well. That's a pretty significant benefit to having some rural areas here in the province, but it also far exceeds the requirements in most provinces and states, of course. So we're able to avoid a lot of those concerns, and we throughout the environmental assessment process, we'll conduct pre-construction and post-construction monitoring of noise, and those impacts and that modeling is done by a third party, and that'll be posted with our environmental assessment information once it's registered. Moving on to the last couple of slides, light pollution and aeronautical lighting systems. The main component here is that we run through a series of applications with Transport Canada, who will stipulate what lighting is required for each of our turbine units. So based on the turbine size, the height, and where it's located, Transport Canada will automatically mandate the lighting that's required here. And turbine lighting for a wind farm in aggregate is typically synchronized, so lights will be flashed all at the same time for the wind farm and then shut off all at the same time. And that's really to just protect aerodromes and aviation use in the area in terms of safety. Shadow flicker is another item. So with wind turbines, there is some shadow flicker that occurs, and all the modeling associated with that and potential impacts will be shared once completed over the summer months of this year. And when we do post that to the environmental assessment process, it'll be made available for the public to review and comment. Next slide, please. Hunting for Nova Scotians and in other provinces that we have active projects in, hunting will continue to be permitted on site. The main thing here is to use common sense if you are a person who does hunt in the area. It will, of course, be subject to permission from those landowners that have projects on their site. And really for folks to abide by the signage on site pertaining to the project or lands or any sort of safety measures that will need to be in place during project operations. Essentially, if any hunting activities create risk to the project safety or landowner safety, that's when there'll have to be further measures put in place. And lastly, I think we've noticed and recognized that there have been some concerns in the Cumberland area, but also in other areas of the province pertaining to decommissioning and the obligation to decommission projects at the end of life. Part of this process, there will be a reserve account set up for this project and other projects that are commissioned in the province through an agreement with Nova Scotia Power. So $20,000 per megawatt up to 1.2 million will be put into a reserve account at the project onset to enable the project to have some security that will be decommissioned at the end of the project life cycle. But also there is a lot of value in the materials that wind turbines are comprised of at their end of life. So what we typically see in the industry is recycling of those components. There's a lot of copper and steel and other materials that have high value. So there is a lot of value in that recycling process. We also anticipate that with the bylaw changes at the Cumberland County level, there will be further onus on developers such as ourselves to ensure that there's a plan for decommissioning that's approved by the region. Next slide. So here we just wanted to focus on the lens of who typically benefits from projects like this. So from a very high level, typically with wind farms, we see a lot of benefits that are indirect and direct. Local labor services and materials, we tend to try and hire locally as much as we can, try to source materials and services locally to the extent possible. Not only does that really benefit those who have those services locally, but we tend to really enjoy that part of it because we do develop relationships that are helpful for the project. It really starts to develop a bit more of a community around the project construction and operation phase. So we're always fairly keen to pursue that. Benefits from the project will be spread to various stakeholders, of course, similar to what we've done previously for our projects in Nova Scotia, but also for First Nation communities, which is a very central tenet of this particular procurement. There always tends to be a strong positive impact on local businesses, so folks that provide services that are useful for the site, and project revenues will be shared with local community groups and underrepresented communities throughout the province. So that process is currently in play, where we're working with a few underrepresented community groups to ensure there are benefits from each of our projects. As with any wind or solar projects specifically, there's significant carbon dioxide offset. So as I mentioned before, we still have a pretty carbon intensive grid. So this will help the province to transition away from that. And we are expecting that this project will produce enough power for about 20,000 homes annually. A bit of a deeper dive on the project benefits on this slide is our social program partners, landowners, and ratepayers. So in terms of social program partners, we committed a 7-figure amount that we've set aside to organizations that support underrepresented groups. So First Nation communities, African Nova Scotians, and women throughout the province. And that's really a paramount aspect of this project and others that we've proposed in the project. In terms of our landowners, our anchor landowners are a couple that live in the area. The Crown represents another landowner base for this project. So the lease payments from the project will flow directly to the province and Nova Scotians. And our third landowner is a local company that employs a lot of folks throughout the Cumberland County area. And our fourth landowner is a small company based in the area as well. And they produce agricultural products known for its buy local status. For Nova Scotia ratepayers, the main benefit is that wind has really become a competitive source of energy. The price for power that we're able to generate from these projects has significantly decreased over the years. And that's just an indication of how hard the market and the industry has worked to reach that level. Last slide on the benefits pertains to our employees and our suppliers. So with the ability to develop wind farms and solar farms in Nova Scotia, it's a significant benefit to folks like ourselves who work here in Halifax on projects that will be built here in Nova Scotia. There's jobs during development, construction, and operation, of course. And with our headquarters here in Halifax, a lot of the folks on the call tonight, we've been working on these projects for a few years now and contributed to the previous energy transition that Nova Scotia underwent through the COMFIT program. Again, local businesses and owners of local businesses will see benefits from the project during construction and even in the post-construction phase when we're operating projects. So we tend to have needs for local service kind of throughout the entire life cycle of the project. And in terms of taxpayers in Cumberland County, we're expecting that the project will create around $500,000 a year in municipal tax revenues. So from a municipal perspective, that's a fairly significant offset to ratepayers. Last slide. So just in terms of where we stand today, generally speaking, we expect if this project is awarded through the procurement that we'll start construction late next year, if not in 2024. But really anticipating that construction season for us will run from 2024, and then we'll start commercial operation in 2025. We're sitting in this blue set of 7 steps in the project development phase. There are several other steps to development, but these are kind of the higher level milestone items. So we're still currently working on the environmental assessment field surveys and reporting. Project design is underway, and a lot of our engagement work is underway and will continue throughout project development, construction, operations, of course. So that concludes the general crux of the presentation for this evening, but I'll hand things back over to Sarah.
Great, thanks, Jay. So we actually have a lot of questions coming into the chat here. Please continue throughout the question and answer period to type in your questions. And I'm going to get started. The first question that we have here is, when will the actual number of towers be known? So Jay, I'm going to pass that one to you. And if you can provide an answer there, I'm just going to keep sorting the questions here in the chat.
Yeah, of course. So the bid for this project is due early May, and we're very close to finalizing the layout as it was indicated here in the presentation slides. We are able to bid different combinations or configurations for the site, so the maximum number of turbines and locations will be known in the next couple of weeks.
Great. So the next question here is, with 4 bidders currently being bid in the COBAQUIDs, have there been any studies on the cumulative effects on the region if multiple sites are chosen? So Jay, I'll actually get you to address that one as well, please.
So my perspective on that would be that there is no cumulative effects assessment being done by each independent developer. Cumulative effects assessment is fairly common in the environmental assessment practice, but that would have to be undertaken by a provincial or federal body. I would suspect that in the process of reviewing the environmental assessment documentation at the provincial level, the province will consider that sort of in aggregate.
If I could add something to that, so this is a rate-based procurement. And the goal really is for the province and the utility to minimize the electricity costs paid by the ratepayers. And when making that consideration, it's really the most valuable to have a diverse array of project locations throughout the province to basically feed multiple loads centers throughout the province, and not just Halifax and not just Truro and Cumberland and whatnot. So my perspective is that won't happen. I don't think there will be 4 projects chosen in this area, just based on the value of energy. Well, the energy being more valuable when spread across the province, and also just the local transmission capacity that's available in the area.
Probably, if I may add to that as well, maybe we should also mention that there are a few projects proposed closer to Halifax. Those projects will be very valuable, as Mason mentioned in his comments, from a group perspective, and also will receive more points in the RFP. So we'd expect that some of those projects closer to Halifax would be awarded. And I agree with Mason. I'm confident that the program administrator, after consulting with or discussing with Nova Scotia Power, will not make the move to award 4 projects in the area.
Great, thanks, folks. On to the next question here. What if the new Cumberland bylaws end up at a 3 to 5 kilometer setback? Can you still find suitable microsites for the 11 towers? So either Jay or Stefan, I'll ask you to address this and the bylaws.
Yeah, maybe I start, Jay, and you continue. If such a bylaw would be implemented, I think it's no secret that our project will have troubles and might end up not be viable. Especially I don't remember where I read this, but somewhere someone suggested that those setbacks would be from the property line and not from any receptors. So if you look at our site, I think it becomes obvious that our site will have problems with a setback requirement of 35 kilometers, especially from the property line. However, maybe what should be noted there is that even if we don't have the possibility to move around turbines to meet that new requirements, other projects in the area that possess a bigger area where they could put turbines, there are chances that some of those proponents might meet that requirement.
Yeah, that last point too, I think it can be fairly common with larger crown parcels that have been dissolved into one large parcel for management purposes. So that wouldn't necessarily preclude other sites from being successful.
Great, thanks, folks. So there's a few questions that have come in that are repetitions. So I'm going to start merging questions together just based on when the earliest one was asked. So this question revolves around consulting third-party firms in EA. So essentially, the amalgamation of about 2 or 3 questions here is who is doing your EA and who is your third-party consulting firm? So Jay, I will let you answer that.
Yeah, of course. We tend to use a mix of environmental assessment consultants. At present, we're using 2 for this site. One is WSP Canada, located in Dartmouth, and the other is Strum Consulting. They're located in Bedford area. Both of those consulting firms, they'll be noted in the environmental assessment documentation in a few months anyhow. So that'll be public knowledge. That's typically that's a subset of who we've used in the past. We've used various environmental consultants in other provinces and here in Nova Scotia as well. So.
Great. Next question here is, how does the Cumberland County wind moratorium affect your plans? So Stefan, if you want to maybe start on there, and then Jay or anybody else, feel free to jump in.
We appreciate and understand why Cumberland County decided to do that review of the bylaws. Our understanding is that it's currently underway. The timeline that Cumberland has communicated suggests that they plan to be done with that review in June, to our understanding. We hope that we will have sufficient visibility with the information that is shared by the municipality over the next couple of weeks and months, so that we have enough visibility to bid in our project into the RFP. But yeah, it has created a situation where we don't quite know what is coming our way. But we follow the process and hope that we'll still be able to move forward with our project despite any new bylaw updates.
Yeah, nothing further from my side on that one, Sarah.
I guess I would just add, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, that our path forward doesn't really change much with respect to the ground studies and the environmental work that we have to take place, whether or not those bylaws do or do not change. And with regards to the procurement itself, we may bid this project with some uncertainty, and it may result in a lost bid security payable to the program administrator. But I think our plan is just to continue doing the environmental development work and continuing with the site.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, so next question, again, we had this from a few people in the chat, so I'm just going to amalgamate it into one here. So it's a 2-parter. Number 1, how tall from tip to blade will your turbines be, as well as how tall from base to hub? So either Mason or Jason, somebody from technical side, I'll ask you to answer that.
I think I see Jason on his calculator right now, so let Jason do that.
No, the maximum height that we're looking at is at like a 200 meter ground level to tip height. And kind of the rough maximum height or hub heights that we're looking at is in terms of an upwards limit would be around 120 meters above ground level. So from base to hub, roughly 120 meters is the maximum, and up to the blade tip would be at roughly 200 meters above ground level. That's our maximum. We could end up with slightly smaller blade lengths in the slightly lower tower, depending on how the turbine's selected in the next little while.
Great. So the next series of questions is all to do specifically with moose. So I'm just gonna, again, merge a few in here. Where did you look for moose? Specifically, what types of terrains? Was it in wetlands, lakes areas, anything besides along roads? You know what, I'll let you answer, Jay, I'll let you respond to that one, and then I'll go to the next part of that question.
Yeah, I'm not conducting those studies myself, obviously, and we're waiting for updates on that from our environmental consulting group. So all the information pertaining to methodology and so on and so forth will be posted with that study in the summer when we register this for the EA, and be available for review and public comment at that time.
Great. So the next question here in and around moose is, does your project area overlap with core moose habitat or essential moose habitat?
Yeah, I guess from my side, we won't really know that until we receive feedback from the environmental consulting team. They're just finishing those moose track surveys and so on, and the distribution of the surveys and so on and so forth will be posted at that same time as the study this summer.
So on to the next question here. You said that you would install cameras for moose during construction. Why not start now? Jay, maybe you want to just keep addressing the moose topic.
Yeah, sure. We do have cameras on site that were installed in November of last year, and they have not yet been removed from site. So they track their motion sensor cameras, so they track movement throughout the project site. So even like it would identify if there was a coyote on site, for example, moose on site by extension, and so on and so forth. So all that data and analysis will be posted with the report during the EA process this summer. Yeah. But yeah, to answer that question, there are cameras, and there have been cameras on site since the late fall of last year.
Great. So shifting gears a little bit into a different topic, the next question that we have here is, are your land leases all in place and signed, including the Crown land leases? So maybe Mason, I'll get you to start, and then Stefan, I'll have you finish up if that's okay with you folks.
Yeah, so all of the private leases are signed. And regarding the Crown, and Stefan, maybe you can elaborate on this, but the way that the Crown land leases function in Nova Scotia for wind projects is such that you can't physically sign a Crown land lease without a signed power purchase agreement, and you can't sign a power purchase agreement without a system impact study, and you can't get a system impact study without a signed power purchase agreement. So there's kind of like 3 reports there that all have to happen at the same time, and basically what will initiate that next step is being awarded in the RFP, and then you know, the Crown would do their environmental review along with our private environmental review, and all 3 of those things would kind of happen around the same time, and that's true for all Crown land leases in the province for wind projects.
Yeah, absolutely correct. At this point in time, we're not able to obtain a Crown land lease yet, which is true for every developer in the province. The program administrator has implemented a procedure where the Crown looks at suggestions from developers, which parts for which Crown areas they want to use, and tries to ensure that, you know, there is no impact and on old forestry parks etc. So this review has been finished for our project, and nothing negative came back during that review. That is positive, but the ground lease we will only obtain after we got awarded. Correct.
Great, thanks guys. Moving forward here. So Birds Canada is looking for a tower to place a radar for their research to better understand birds and wildlife movement around the central Quoboquits. Would you consider hosting a MODIS radar on your Met Tower? So maybe Jay or Billy, I'll get one of you to respond to that.
Yeah, I don't know the weights and dimensions of the MODIS radar. The tubular Met towers that we tend to use that are 60 meters tall may not be equipped to have a radar placed on them. If we have other towers in New Brunswick, for example, that are larger lattice towers they need to be lattice when they're quite tall. Those towers will probably be equipped to host that radar. If there was an opportunity to co-host a ground radar, we would certainly entertain that discussion with CWS. Every project site in the province that we develop that is slated to be awarded a contract or have an EA registered will be deploying a radar unit through our environmental consultant team as well. So they'll handle that scope and process for us at that time. And that would typically start in the spring and finish out to the fall migratory period at the end of October.
Yeah, and just for some more info, we've previously done something like this for our New Brunswick project that came online in 2019. So we worked with CWS, Acadia University, and New Brunswick's local government pertaining to environmental regulations and whatnot with respect to migratory birds and the effect of wind turbines on those birds. And we deployed a ground level radar to track migratory birds at our site. And I believe that project received NSERC funding and whatnot. I think the report should be public fairly soon.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's yeah, that's in the Bay of Fundy area in New Brunswick. So not, as a crow flies, not too far off Nova Scotia, but obviously all migratory birds in the Maritimes, while not being the same, the data is valuable across projects.
I'm not sure if you meant that as a pun, but I'm taking it as such. Next question here is what specific brands and or models of turbines are you considering?
Maybe I'll try to answer that one. We haven't chosen our turbine manufacturer yet. We are also not obliged to do so for the bid. If you like the turbines we're currently looking at, like basically if you Google the market share of wind turbine suppliers in North America, take the first 5 ones, and then you probably have a good overview of the suppliers we're looking at. There are only a couple of suppliers worldwide that would meet the requirements the way we have to meet them for this RFP. So it's really basically one handful of potential turbine suppliers, all of which have hundreds and thousands of megawatts installed in their markets. So, decades of experience. But again, we ask for your understanding that we currently haven't chosen our turbine supplier yet. Typically, we will only be able to really tell which turbine it will be once we sign the turbine supply agreement. We appreciate that some other competitors have already shared their plans for which turbine they plan to use. Obviously, we can't look into their plans, but I'm fairly confident that they have not yet signed the turbine supply agreement at this point in time, and that they might consider changing turbine type later in time, or at least have the possibility to do so. But again, that's just my best guess, knowing the market the way it is. So yeah, if I think maybe it's important to note that probably all the proponents under this RFP will be looking at the same turbine types for the same kind of areas. It's proven technology. Everyone tries to, maximize the yield, have low risk, all of that, and then obviously low price, which would then be reflected in a lower price for the Nova Scotian ratepayers. So, it's not really a secret, those turbine types. It's just we haven't chosen them yet. There's really a handful that would be suitable for our site, and we'll choose them over the next few months.
And see Jason about to say something. I'm sure you want to go, Jason?
I was just going to mention that I guess the crux of it too is that generally speaking, the turbines that we're looking at are all roughly within the same size range, and kind of all roughly like the hub heights and the blade lengths are kind of roughly around the same size range. So there won't be significant change from what we talked about earlier by the time the project's awarded and then built. Yeah. And I think kind of the main focus for us is that really, if we were to decide now and post that now, there's a lot of value for ratepayers in finding that lowest cost of energy. So that's sort of our focus right now, is to ensure that that's what we're able to provide in our bid, is the lowest cost of energy for ratepayers.
Yeah, and maybe Stefan, you did mention this and I missed it, but the program administrator lays out pretty stringent guidelines of what types of turbines you can propose on these projects, and there's a lot of requirements that speak to a proven track record of different turbines that a lot of the smaller manufacturers won't meet, frankly, and probably just the top 3 to 5 will. So those are the ones we're speaking with.
That is correct, and that's a good point, maybe, Mason, if I may follow up on this one, because I think, and then Sarah, you will probably get to it, but I think someone asked in the chat a question around where have those turbines been installed, etc. The program administrator in the RFP asks the proponents to either show, a track record of how many, it's like a certain minimum number of megawatts installed of a certain turbine type in the past. Or if this is not the case, then there's another possibility of kind of get the confirmation from the turbine supplier that we plan to use. Again, we don't have to decide this in our bid yet, but we need to give enough information to the procurement administrator so that they have confidence that the turbine types we're looking at would meet this, all the standards that are to be met. And then the program administrator allows us also to, provide a statement from those turbine suppliers, potential turbine suppliers, to say we are currently in the process of getting our turbines certified. Those certifications, they're done by international engineering consulting firms, and kind of every turbine that hits the market will have those certifications. We are, and this is not a secret because all that information is public, we are obliged, should, that's that track record that I mentioned earlier not be met. And if we only plan with turbines that are currently in the process of being certified, then we are allowed to post security to Nova Scotia Power and deliver that, finalized certification later in time. You might ask now, why using turbines that are not certified, for those 25 years lifetime yet? This market, this technology is evolving extremely quickly. So given that those projects that will be awarded have to be online in 2025, we need to consider turbine types that will be available at that point in time when we plan to construct them, and not turbine types that have been used in 10 years ago. This is important, be up to speed with the technology that is out there. at the day when we actually plan to construct them. Sorry, Mason and Jason, I hope you agree with my comments, but otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Okay, guys, moving on to, we still have a few more questions coming in here. So moving on, there's again a number of overlapping questions that I'm just going to meld here. So first a comment, then into a question. So the core habitat for moose is available for free on the government website. And then following up from that comment into the question section, can you share a project area overlay with core and essential moose habitat since this data is available? Strum should already have the information. Is it possible for you to share this before the RFP? So Jay, if you wouldn't mind addressing that, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll check with Strum about being able to kind of draft that map. It should be fairly obvious if the project overlaps with that area just from looking at it online. So we could probably provide a map like that at a later date, but I would think that the community, just by looking at it online, will be able to determine that as well.
On to the next question here. So please provide a comparison of tower size at 200 meters. For example, could we compare the towers to something that we are familiar with within Truro or Cumberland? Have these towers been deployed in North America to date as well so that we can reach out to those communities? So maybe Jay, I'll get you to address that. And I think Stefan, you might have something to say about the turbine deployment. So maybe Jay, I'll start with you and then lead in.
Sure. I think most operational projects in Nova Scotia are probably sitting on tower heights of 90 to 100 or 105 meters. We have a project in New Brunswick, in southeastern New Brunswick, proximal to Fundy National Park, that has a tower height of 118 meters and blade length of 63 meters. So that's that project. It's public. It's a Vestas V126. The environmental assessment for that site is still available. It was registered in 2018. So we'd certainly be amenable to sharing that information. It's all public. There are several stakeholders in that project area that have driven by or hunt in the area and so on and so forth. We haven't been in touch with them because there hasn't really been any concern. So, but that's a project that exists in New Brunswick, not far from here. And those taller tower heights are deployed in Ontario, Alberta. British Columbia has a fair bit of it because the air is so thin there. So larger blade sweep is pretty critical at higher tower heights. And then kind of in the Midwest in the US and so forth. Yeah. I think Stefan had maybe something to add.
Yeah, no, I think for the second half of the question, I kind of already tried to explain the concept that will be applied in the RFP. Maybe to add on to that is that what turbine suppliers typically do is they use technology that they have deployed in the past, and we're talking about gigawatts and gigawatts, and continue to develop that technology, to upgrade it, to make it better. So we're not really talking about, a total new technology. We're talking about a constant improvement. Similar to cars. They're not it's not like a total new technology. We know a technology, and it's general technology that just evolves over time. So yeah. So should there be any? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing I think that's kind of interesting. So I started out doing wind development in 2014. And in 2014, 2015, 2016, even into 2017, if you took like a 12 megawatt project, for example, which would be a little larger than any of the ComFet sites in New Brunswick or Nova Scotia, a project of that size used to take 6 turbines, for example, all with the roughly 100-meter tower height, 55-meter blades. Now we're able to do it with 2 as opposed to 6, which is, in terms of the environment, it's fewer turbine pads, it's fewer roads, it's less collection system. So it's a pretty big transition in the industry that we are able to produce more power with a single unit than we ever could before. And that's generally the way that the industry and the markets responded to concerns in terms of cost of energy and potential impacts on the environment. So it's a pretty significant change in the last 3 to 5 years.
Great, thank you. Moving into the next question here. Has there ever been a project proposed in Nova Scotia which did not proceed due to the presence of migratory birds? Jay, I don't know. I mean, you have the most familiarity with specifically Nova Scotia environmental assessment and impact reporting. Are you aware of any projects which did not proceed? I know projects that have been, conditioned based on migratory birds, but I'm not aware of any that have actually been denied.
Yeah, I don't know the whole suite of environmental assessment registrations. So I wouldn't be able to say yes or no to that without just being speculatory. There have been some fairly tough environmental assessments in the Amherst Allac region. So that Amherst project had a lot of scrutiny. There was a project proposed on the New Brunswick side by Acciona back in 2015, I think, or 2014. And I think that project on the New Brunswick side, I think they actually gave up on trying to push it through. It was in kind of a very core migratory bird area. It's an IBA, important bird area. Just for folks on the line, we have always, as a rule of thumb, avoided any IBA in Canada. And the equivalent in the US, we've always set our sites away from those. It's good practice, so that's what we tended to work towards.
Do you mind spelling out the acronym? Sorry.
IBA is just important bird area, yeah, and that's available on the CWS, Canadian Wildlife Service website.
And just to touch on something Sarah mentioned, so projects with conditions that relate to migratory birds, that would require a wind farm basically shutting down its turbines during certain times of year and certain conditions to allow birds to pass more safely. So those types of things will be determined prior to construction in the EA process, and then we would be subject to those terms.
Great, thanks, folks. Next question here is, what is the cost you must provide to ratepayers? So this is actually a little bit more of an explanation side of things. Maybe Stefan, I'll get you to break down sort of the point of the rate-based section of procurement, and then we can sort of address this question from there.
So I hope I correctly understood the questions. Like when we talk about cost to ratepayers, I mean, what we provide to the procurement administrator is we offer a price that we can meet, and that will for electricity on a per megawatt hour basis, and that will find its way into the PPA with Nova Scotia Power. So basically, we resell the electricity at that price to Nova Scotia Power. Obviously, we can't share what that price will be, because otherwise all our competitors will just bid 1 cent less, right, and not bid us. So we kindly ask for understanding that we won't share that. However, the RFP requires proponents to offer a price at least of $58 per megawatt hour or lower. So that's what's currently written in the RFP. If I'm allowed a personal note, I believe I've seen interviews or news articles that spoke about $56 per megawatt hour. However, we need to go off what the current RFP says. Maybe that will be rectified and will be around $56 per megawatt hour going forward. Who knows? But this is so it will be $58 per megawatt hour or lower for all the projects that get awarded. This is kind of a given. Obviously, all the proponents try to be as low as possible because they get more points awarded under this RFP evaluation. So, the cheaper it gets, the better, number one, for Nova Scotia ratepayers, and also the better for the proponents if they want to get awarded, obviously. I hope that answers the question, but if not, please follow up.
Yeah, and if I could add something, Nova Scotia Power has an average marginal cost of energy. That's basically the average cost that they pay to serve the next kilowatt hour of their load, basically to serve the next person's house, whatever you want to say. And it's prescribed to us that we must be lower than that. So from that, you can basically infer that the average cost of electricity that Nova Scotia Power pays will fall after this procurement because we are mandated to bid lower than the average price.
Great, thanks both. Next question here. Have you done any acoustic and or visual impact analysis or assessments for the resident receptors at Sutherland Lake, Isaacs Lake, Westchester, Wentworth, and or Folly Lake? So that's for those on our team as well. These are the local communities in the area. So just looking for an answer to have we done any acoustic, visual impact analysis or assessment for any of those communities. So Jay, I can see you nodding your head already to go, so I'll let you start and go from there.
Yeah, it's kind of all part of the process of the environmental assessment. So we'll be doing all those different vantage points over the summer, and we'll be posting a visual impact assessment that will be done by a third party as part of the EA, and that'll be posted at that time and available for public comment. And at that same time, once we do post and register the environmental assessment, there will be a public comment window. The window just means time, so roughly 30 or 45 days. I can't quite recall. And during that time, after that review period's over, we'll have a public meeting so the community members can come and discuss those findings with us there. And there will be members of the consulting firm there to answer questions as well.
If I could add to that, because I do see, if I may, another question in the chat concerned about the noise and flicker with bigger units. So obviously that will be addressed in the EA, and just some more background on how the sound is studied. It is looking at the cumulative effect. So they basically take the sound of one turbine that is studied by the turbine manufacturer, and that data is given to you. And based on the actual layout of the proposed park, you then get a cumulative sound profile based on, clusters of more turbines may be louder, whereas a turbine further away may be quieter. So they are looking at the cumulative effect. So when you're looking at the evolution of turbines, there were more turbines spinning, producing sound years ago to serve the same load that fewer turbines will do, and presumably do much quieter. So there is a evolution of sound in these turbines as well. And additionally, there's a lot of new mechanical designs and controls implemented in the turbines to kind of reduce sound output of those.
Yeah, I'm gonna just this is the one time I'm gonna break from answering in time sequence. I'm just gonna address the next question here, which is just right on topic to what we've been discussing, which is how will you choose your receptors and will you get local input? So Jay, maybe I'll get you to start. I can certainly add a little bit of information there on this. And yeah, we can go from there.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Some provinces have defined receptors in the environmental guidelines, but and we do meet those requirements wherever we do develop sites. But one thing that we do a lot of is folks from the team that are on the line tonight. We spend time on site verifying if the receptors that show up in the mapping are in fact there. But also, kind of the bigger thing about that exercise is that we're able to identify receptors that don't show up in the mapping. So, for example, in New Brunswick, I had a large site that we worked on, and we found a number of hunting camps in the area that weren't represented in the online mapping that was produced by the province. So we directly engaged those stakeholders with letters and then created relationships to let them know about the project sites. There were no concerns from those particular community members, but we would look for some feedback from the community in terms of with the maps that we're sharing. If there are new homes being built that aren't shown in the mapping, we'd be more than happy and would welcome those comments and that information as soon as possible, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just gonna add, I'm sort of gonna break my moderator role right here and just add a quick comment as well. Jay, you sort of hit the nail on the head here. Ground truthing of data is an integral part to understanding the site itself. So, I mean, having personally been on site, I can understand that what you see on a screen isn't always what it looks like in the real world. And so we will definitely take not only our consultants out, but also the team that's in front of you tonight will also be ground truthing and checking to make sure that what is included is actually representative of the community and of the area, not just what the data suggests. Oftentimes that receptors layer that is publicly available off the Nova Scotia government website is only updated once every 6 months to a year, depending on pretty much the GIS text at the government. So that can oftentimes be outdated or be incorrect, which is why ground truthing is so vital to the project and to development. Taking my developer hat off, putting my moderator hat back on, and moving on to the next question. Jason said that STRUM could likely produce a project area overlay with the core and essential moose habitat on it. He said that we may share this, but suggested the community can or should do it. Will SWEB commit to sharing a project area map overlay with core and essential moose habitat on or before the RFP? So with this one, I can start, and then Jay, if you want to finish. We do have a services scoping agreement with STRUM that does include mapping. We will need to touch base with them first to see and understand what mapping they've already completed, what they will be sending to us, what will be included in our environmental assessment. Once we hear back from them, then we can make a plan to say, okay, what mapping can we do versus what mapping they've already completed. We're just trying to avoid basically doubling up any work at this point in time and throughout this process. Jay, I don't know if you want to add anything there.
Yeah, no, that's sort of what I was going to say. We're expecting a lot of those results in the coming weeks from the winter track surveys as well. So there's a lot of data that we're keen to see. So yeah, we'll check in with STRUM to see what those final deliverables are going to look like.
Great. So next question here. In a previous question, I asked why the 1 kilometer setback is used. Other proponents and literature say a minimum of 2.5 to 5 kilometer setbacks. So maybe Jay, I'll get you to address that. Stefan, I think you and I have discussed this before, and yeah, start with that.
Sure. Ontario, for example, the Office of Climate Change there, they employ a 550 meter setback from homes. Part of that was provincially mandated, but also part of it was done through consultation with the World Health Organization back in the mid-2010s. That was industry standard in Ontario for a long time. What really sort of guides that as well is the actual sound impact that we model. So what we found is that 550 can work, but and that's where sort of the 45 or 40 dBA limit is for a project site in terms of the cumulative impact from sound. But by going out to a kilometer, we far exceed that limit significantly, and we also far exceed provincial standards here in Canada on that front.
Maybe I can add. Sorry, I'm having computer troubles right now. So there we are. Can you still hear me? Yeah. So maybe I can add to that. If we talk about setbacks of 5 kilometers, maybe we should also consider the environment we're working in. Obviously, typically, if the further away from homes receptors you are, the more likely you have a bigger impact on the environment. It's kind of the rule of thumb, right? It's maybe something to consider, but that's not always true, but it's something to consider. But what I actually wanted to say is when we talk about 5 kilometer setback, we should keep in mind that some of those homes or receptors in that area are in proximity to the motorway. That is potentially even a lot closer than those 5 kilometers. So yeah, that's maybe something that is worth considering for our specific site.
Okay. Next question here is, I'm concerned that STRUM is being used for other proponents as well. How can you ensure that there is no conflict of interest or interference, as well as transparency, when there have already been issues with this consultant with another proponent? So maybe Jay, I'll get you to start on that, and I can go from there.
Yeah, we don't have any sort of visibility on who consultants work with besides ourselves until we see environmental assessment documentation that might have their logo on it, or maybe the documentation has been published by them. So we don't know of any issues with any consultants that we work with in Nova Scotia in relation to other developers or anything like that. We also don't have the authority to have consultants we work with work exclusively with us. That's sort of the type of work they do, is they're service providers. So that would be like us going to a hotel and asking a hotel not to rent rooms to any other company. We can't really do that. So yeah, that's my only comment. I don't know if anybody else from the team has anything to add there.
I mean, just in general, just speaking, working with these suppliers in the past, they do act in a professional manner. We also have non-disclosure agreements with them so that there will be no interference between our project information and other project information. But again, Jay sort of hit the nail on the head. We unfortunately cannot say, you can only work exclusively with us. That's just not how they work or run their company structures. Into the next question here. So, and also folks, I just wanted to give everybody a 5-minute warning for the allotted time that we have tonight. I do want to be respectful of people's evenings. Again, if there's any question that is not answered within the next 5 minutes, I'm happy to stay a few minutes late, as well as I'm sure most of our team members are. And then every question and answer asked tonight will be posted to the project website, both via recording as well as in a written transcript. Sorry, folks, jumping back into the questions here. So you've shared your landowner partners. However, significant weighting in the RFP is Indigenous ownership and participation. Can you share your First Nation partner and/or the form/scale of economic participation in your bid? So maybe Stefan, if you want to start, and Jay, if you want to come in after, that would be great.
Mm-hmm. We're not able to disclose First Nation partner yet. We are currently in discussion with with groups that have an interest in partnering with us. We are very confident that we will have the agreements in place before the bid due date that then allows us to share that with the community. I hope this will be rather sooner than later. We had some very good good discussions and a lot of interest to participate in those projects. But again, I kindly ask you for understanding that we wouldn't be able to share anything without breaking our confidentiality obligations at this point in time. Maybe important to mention also is that the previous versions of the RFP allowed also not just to partner with First Nation communities, but with municipalities. So we worked a lot on that as well in the past to discuss with municipalities the interest to actually become a part owner of our projects. That possibility is not allowed anymore. Since the last iteration of the RFP, we have been given the understanding from the procurement administrator through their Q&A document that they uploaded to their website that the province and the procurement administrator are looking into the possibility for the Green Choice program, which will be issued end of this year probably, which will be another procurement, but probably of smaller size. The possibility to partner with municipalities again, but you know, that's still up in the air, and we have to wait to see if that actually will become true going forward over the next few months. But as soon as we have that, you know, as soon as the ink is dry, we're obviously happy to share the details with the community going forward.
Great. So next question here, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I believe this was meant to say KMZ files. So can you share the KMZ files for tower locations on your website, or if the community requests it? So I can actually probably answer this question here. It's probably unlikely that we would share a KMZ file. KMZ files can be very easily manipulated, and we've actually had issues with them in the past. We're certainly happy to share coordinates, more maps, anything that we know that the data is accurate on. We do generally try and avoid the KMZ file format if we can, but certainly, you know, we can make coordinates information available, not a problem. We can post that to the website, or, you know, we've already had folks reach out asking for coordinates for the proposed turbine locations and have already provided them already to date. So certainly not a problem there. We'd be happy to give that information.
The only caveat is that just in the environmental assessment process over the summer months, there might be some changes. So just a note for the community that, you know, through identification or field delineation of wetlands, for example, or any sort of habitat that is deemed significant or critical or like that, or just any sort of microsegment tends to occur, that would just change those turbine coordinates. Hopefully very, very minimal changes, but just to note that is a possible outcome.
Yeah, and so the last question that's here in the chat and closing us out now at 8 o'clock is, will you commit to the 25 decibel level rating recommendation from the WHO, which is recommended for rural communities? So maybe Jay, I'll get you to address this last question here.
Yeah, I don't know of that limitation, and I don't know what it's relative to. Like, is that the facade of a home, or what that might be? Don't know if that particular member could add more details, but that might be better addressed offline, just with a bit more information. So if that person can submit that question, maybe on the next slide that has their contact info, we can address that one offline with a bit more details Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, not a problem. And so just a reminder, folks, this is one stop in our engagement throughout this process here. Any questions, feedback, any information that you're looking for, we're certainly happy and able to provide. So you can see Jason's project contact information specifically, as well as SWEB's contact information for our team and our company. As well, we understand that not everybody works in a digital format. We do understand that people still request things in hard copy. And if there is anything that you do need within a hard copy, I mean, you're very welcome to stop at our Halifax office or send us a letter or a message, a phone call, anything asking for hard copies to be sent. We are certainly able to provide that as well. And with that, we are 2 minutes after 8. So I am going to close the session, but please continue to reach out to us. We look forward to hearing more questions, more feedback, and anything else that we can do in the meantime to continue to involve the community. So with that, we would just like to thank everybody for attending and your participation tonight, and hope you have a great night.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Jason, are you still on there?
Yeah, I can see this one that just slid in here as well. Oh shoot, just close. So there was a question that just came in that says, as we try and evaluate competing bids, what would you say to us to support your bid over the others?
Sorry.
Sorry.
So should I try to take that? Sorry, I wasn't sure what else.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a good way to close it out, but we could definitely obviously provide more info on the site and the email and whatnot. But
yeah, Stefan, if you want to maybe address it verbally now, and we'll make sure that we post this in written format, as well as continue this recording and make sure that gets posted as well, so that the few folks who
attendees already might drop off, but I'll nevertheless try to maybe give a few words and we post it to the website so everyone will have the benefit of our answer.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen in the area a lot of concerns about the wind energy projects that were mentioned earlier. As someone posted correctly, there are 4 projects proposed or that we're aware of in the area. We have reviewed those concerns. We understand where they're coming from. There's a lot of good comments there, and we hope that if the community looks at our project, they'll see there's a few obvious differences to other projects. So if you ask yourselves why supporting our project and not others, there's a few obvious differences. Maybe the most important one is our project is smaller, and we understood that size or the number of turbines of those projects is a concern in certain communities. So that is maybe an important one. Also, obviously, the distance to certain important geographical features in the area. We are confident and hope that we will have the minimal impact in this regard, especially when comparing with other projects. An important one that we're proud of is that we are based in Nova Scotia. Our headquarters for North America is based in Nova Scotia. We appreciate the fact that pretty much every proponent in this RFP will have somehow ties to a company abroad. It is our industry is very, very global. So it's very unlikely that there is a proponent out there that only does business in Nova Scotia and can promise you that 100% of the profit that this project will make stays or the benefit economic benefit will stay in the province. So I guess what's left is to find a developer that has the closest ties with the province and ensures that the community and the province benefits the most. We hope that we can show the community that we are this developer by, like showing you we have an office in Nova Scotia. We do employ people in Nova Scotia. So we'll not be flying in and out to develop this project. We are on site. We do we're in close contact with the community. We work with local landowners that live in the area or are based in the area. So I guess that's a big point. But yeah, obviously in the end, it's up to the community to ask questions. We're here, we're listening, and let us know what we can do to gain your trust, I would say. Sorry, I talk a lot.
No, that was great. And yeah, I mean, there's a final comment in here just saying that we've got some great attributes and we should start pushing them by contrasting to the other developers. I'm just going to address this really quickly. I hope that's okay with folks. A lot of that contrast will actually come out within the RFP itself as well. The fact that we're, based here, like I'm sitting in my house in Tantallon, like we live in the province. We're based here. We're local. The fact that we are a smaller project. All these key points and key attributes do come out in the RFP process itself. Sorry, I feel like if anybody else wanted to add, go.
Well, maybe just to mention, I mean, obviously we're trying to show our qualities, and then appreciate the comment that we start pushing our great attributes by contrasting others. But obviously we try to show you those qualities, but we don't necessarily point fingers at our competition. But we understand the comment, and if we're able to gain the trust of the community, obviously we would welcome support letters, one way or the other, or just info on something that we should consider. That would help our project should the community decide that our project is a good project and should move forward. We would appreciate that, but that's up to the community to decide to which extent they would like to support us here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Stefan, I think you hit it on the head. Any information is good information for us to have, especially from members of the local community. The more we can learn, the absolute better this project could potentially be. So, we certainly invite people to continue to reach out, continue to ask questions. We really want to hear from you and understand.
Yeah. No, and I think if I might just add something quickly, just in terms of the team that's in front of you, like most of us didn't just move to the Maritimes, so a lot of us grew up here. We stayed, and we were very fortunate to find work in a field that we are very passionate about. I think that's why we've all stuck to it so tightly, and I think that's why we sort of defend the idea of the transition so much, is because we are really hopeful that the region, the Maritimes kind of at large, can be a leader in transitioning our electricity system. One thing I've always really enjoyed about wind projects in the Maritimes is that how involved the community does get and how big a community grows around a project like this. I still get phone calls and text messages from mayors that I worked with in New Brunswick 5 years ago, asking them we're going to start something new again. So that's, in my mind, sort of one of the visions that I hope proliferates in Cumberland with this project, is that the community feels that they can get involved and that there's an inclusivity process here, and that we're able to work closely with you on this site and make it successful and make the region a bit of a leader in the province for helping out with this transition. So that's something I'm really excited about.
Maybe one more comment, if you allow, Sarah. Sorry,
Yeah, yeah.
one thing that came to my mind was, the question: what would you say to us to support your bid over others? I think an important difference between us and potentially other proponents, but again, we don't know their bids in detail. We don't know their companies in detail. But what we can say about our company is that the way we do business, we develop, we construct, and we operate. We haven't sold a project in the entire group of companies in the last, like basically since the company exists. Can I promise you that we will never do? No, I can't. There might be a change in management, who knows? But so far, like, we don't sell projects, we operate them. What does that mean? That if the community deals with our company and with the people that work in our company, that they will be most likely dealing with the same people in 10 years from now, when the project is operating. And should any questions come up, any issues come up, you will know our people, our operational staff that will be there in the area, often on site. So you shouldn't be you don't have to call somewhere in Vancouver, Toronto, etc. to get in touch with us. You'll probably see us at the local Tim Hortons at some point. So
Yeah,
we hope that that distinguishes us also our company.
Yeah, no, and I've been to the area a fair bit for it's a lot of fun going towards the mountain biking scene in the Wentworth area, and I've been there a fair bit for that specifically. So it's a great area to be around. So
Awesome. Well, yeah, I just want to, thank the attendees again for your participation this evening. These have been excellent questions, comments, and yeah, just a reminder, everything as well will be posted to the project website. I would say give it a couple of days. I'm hoping that by the end of the week everything will be up, but I know our rendering software with WebEx does take a good couple of hours before it produces the recording. So bear with us at least for the next 48 hours, but we will try and get things up certainly by the end of the week so that everybody who wasn't able to attend will be able to access the information. Great. And with that, I'm going to close out the meeting here. Thanks again, and have a great night.
thanks again, everyone.
See ya.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.